The Kings go 0-2 on this brutal back-to-back against Boston and OKC. Not a surprise here. Back-to-back blowouts against two of the best teams in the league, two of the teams that may match up in the NBA Finals this summer. But for this Kings team, it sure feels like we've gotten to the point over a month in of having this roster as is, where we know where a game is going to be won or where a game is going to be lost. But the funny thing is, it's the exact same as it was earlier in this season. Nothing changed with the trades, but the game is won and lost when Sabonis is off the court and you have Zach LaVine out there trying to run the offense. And so Malik Monk being out definitely exacerbates this issue, because having Malik Monk in there would give this team a lot better offensive versatility in the types of lineups they can put out there. But this game was lost when Zach LaVine was in the game trying to run the offense with the rest of the bench in there. When Sabonis, DeMar, Keegan, and Keon were all sitting on the bench and we were running out Markelle Fultz, Zach LaVine, Jake LaRavia, Jonas Valanciunas. At some points, Devin Carter was out there with that group. At some points, Doug McDermott got into this game for some reason. But it was those moments where the offense completely died, and it was the second straight game of our offense being absolutely horrible in the fourth quarter, because at the start of the fourth quarter we are starting Sabonis and DeRozan on the bench. Not that them coming back in really did too much, because they did come back in pretty early, but the thing we saw in this game is the Kings lacking offensive versatility, lacking multiple ways of running their offense, because when we did have Zach LaVine out there trying to run it with the bench unit, it was a lot of pick and roll, trying to force Zach LaVine to be this primary ball handler that he just isn't. And we've tried DeMar DeRozan in this role. It hasn't worked as well. And so it has to be Malik Monk, but Malik missed his third straight game due to illness here. And the game went about as you would expect with the Kings playing the Thunder, just like the Celtics game did. These were just two games that we had to survive. The type of game that you watch in case somehow your team miraculously pulls it off and then it's one of the best wins of the season and you're having a great time. But more likely than not, this is just what's going to happen. That third quarter was fun. The third quarter was great, watching Keegan hit all those three-point shots, watching everyone hit all those three-point shots. And I love the third quarter because I just think that the Kings adapted after the first half. What went wrong in the first half, it felt like they passed up a lot of good looks from outside, trying to force things inside, and that didn't work at all. Trying to go into the teeth of Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. That's never going to work. The Thunder were giving them some space on the perimeter, and they were a little hesitant to get those shots up. In the second half, sparked by Keegan Murray, they were not hesitant to get those shots up, started knocking down from deep, and got 48 three-point attempts up in this game, which is 2 times as many as against Boston. I wouldn't have been mad at seeing them attempt 60, just because that's kind of the only way that you're going to be able to beat the Thunder, especially when DeMar is struggling offensively, when Sabonis just can't hit a thing. And Zach LaVine was okay, but it was the other guys, the shooters in Keegan and Keon and LaRavia coming off the bench. And again, I mean, this has happened game after game after game, but it's those three guys, Keegan, Keon, and LaRavia. Those are the guys that really make massive positive impacts. Being able to play both ways, being able to defend very actively, multiple positions, the effort, the energy from those guys, and the versatility that they provide. Those are the guys that are fun to watch. And when those guys have it going, and when the Kings lean into those guys, is that necessarily going to win you a whole bunch of games if you have to lean into those guys to be your main guys? No. But it is a lot more fun than what we've been watching. And that just highlights the need for those type of versatile guys that the Kings have kind of been lacking when building their rosters. And then you look on the other side, and the Oklahoma City Thunder just have a million of those types of players. At one point in the fourth quarter on the broadcast, I think it was Greg Anthony who said, Doug Christie always wants to have 2 defenders on the court at all times. And I just thought to myself, that's sad. It's sad that we've been at that point where for so long the Kings have only had one defender, one guy who can just defend on the court at any given time. And wanting 2, that feels like a luxury now, when really that should be a requirement. And so those minutes where we have the three defenders in Keegan and LaRavia all on the court at the same time, that feels amazing to a Kings fan who has had to watch starting lineup after starting lineup of 4 bad defenders. But we can start going through this game. I thought the Kings offense started off generating a lot of good looks. Sabonis was getting to the middle of the floor pretty easily, and he was just kicking out for wide open look after wide open look. It felt like every possession, the Kings were getting open 3-point looks. Keegan made an early one. LaVine had an open attempt, had it go in and out, and then passed up the next one. And that's what I hate. I wish LaVine would just turn his brain off and just fire the ball. And he did get up 11 threes, which is a lot better than what he's been doing previously. But there was still some that he passed up. And like I said, if the Kings attempted 63-point shot attempts against the Thunder, I would have been fine with that. But Sabonis was generating a lot of these open looks. Guys just had to be able to knock him down, and Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan both started out very cold. And so if DeMar had just been knocking down a usual amount of shots, or if LaVine had been able to get it going early on, the Kings offense could have looked very good. Defensively, it didn't start out great because the Thunder were just running Chet around these screens and getting him position both inside and outside. Keegan was having a lot of trouble chasing him through all this screening action, getting Chet right down to the rim or getting him open on the 3-point line. He had 5 quick points. They were doing that all game. And pretty much the only time when Chet was able to score against Keegan, for the most part, was when he was just able to come around these screens and get deep position inside. If he had to start outside the paint or any type of distance that wasn't right under the basket, Keegan was able to defend him. But it was just when he was running around these screens, the Kings were having a lot of trouble defending that. But what the Kings did really well early on was force turnovers. They forced Shea into like 4 turnovers early on. They just forced a ton of turnovers. Keon was a big part of that, defending Shea, and guys did a really good job of just swarming to the basketball whenever Shea was catching it. Keegan was blocking some shots, but the Thunder were still able to have a lead because the Kings weren't capitalizing in transition. They weren't knocking down the shots that they needed to knock down, and Shea was getting downhill in the pick and roll enough to generate some offense for the Thunder. The first substitution for the Kings was Jake LaRavia coming in for Zach LaVine. And what I think the Kings need to do, first of all, when Malik Monk comes back, Malik needs to be the first sub. But then I think they also probably need to sub out one of Keon and Keegan with Jake LaRavia coming in so that one of those guys can also come back in and play with the bench unit at the end of the first or start of the second quarter. Just because those lineups with 4 starters sitting on the bench were brutal. But LaRavia came in, was doing some really nice things. He was super active defensively. And like I said, it was great to have Keon, Keegan, and LaRavia all on the court at the same time. And so while I would love to have all those guys on the court at the same time, I do think you maybe need to balance it out a little more. So maybe you can't have all 3 of those guys on the court at the same time, at least not for extended amounts of time. But he came in, he knocked down a 3. The Kings defense continued to force turnovers. Markelle Fultz came in and was good defensively. But then once Sabonis went out, once DeMar went out, your playmaking just completely collapsed because Sabonis and DeMar, despite them not being able to put the ball in the basket, they were the guys making the plays and finding open teammates. So yes, it would have been great if they could have scored, and I'm sure they will tell you they did not have good games, but also they were the only guys generating our offense. And so when the offense slowed down, that let the Thunder pick up the speed offensively because they're now getting rebounds, pushing the other way, and their offense was either Shea getting downhill and getting to the line, or they were generating open threes. Jalen Williams came in. Jay Will knocked down a couple of threes. Kenrich Williams went 3 for 4 from 3. And so, when you have Sabonis going 0 for 4 from 3, and then Jalen Williams and Kenrich Williams combining to go 5 for 8 from 3, and add in a Dylan Jones 3, it's not a good sign against this OKC team. You need the shooting to favor you, but the Thunder shot 59.4% from 3 because they were just able to generate open looks, and the Kings pretty much just had to give Jalen Williams and Kenrich Williams and Dylan Jones open looks, because, like, what else are you going to do? You have to try to stop Shea and Chet. Devin Carter did get some early burn, drew an offensive foul on Shea, but after that didn't really get too many minutes. Zach LaVine did finally get one layup to go on a drive. And when Zach LaVine gets going downhill and when he gets speed, he can beat guys so easily. And he is a very efficient finisher, but he's just such a hot and cold player. When he's on, and when he's not, he really is not, and can't make much. So the Kings were down 10 at the end of the first quarter and just didn't capitalize on all of the turnovers that they created. And late in that quarter, I think Sabonis went out and it was like a 1-point game. And so they were a -9 in the last 3 or 4 minutes when Valanciunas was in there, and they were just trying to run a lot of Zach LaVine, Jonas Valanciunas pick and roll, and that just did not work. The start of the second quarter was an absolute disaster. Doug McDermott came in. Kings give up an easy look. Then they come down. Doug McDermott misses, and then the Thunder just run back the other way and get a wide open layup because of a miscommunication, and Doug Christie calls a timeout. I honestly thought he was just going to pull Doug McDermott there. McDermott, I mean, it was kind of weird to see him come in the game, but he was 0 for 1 from 3 in his stint in the actual game. Then he comes in garbage time, firing the toughest threes you're ever going to see, and goes 3 for 3. Like, bro, just knock one down when it actually matters, please. But the Kings' offense was just brutal. They were passing up good looks for bad looks. Zach LaVine tried to find Jonas Valanciunas inside multiple times, and then Valanciunas would just get swallowed up by Holmgren and by Hartenstein. It was Markelle Fultz mid-ranger and a Jake LaRavia drive to score in the paint. That's where the Kings found their offense. Sabonis was having just a brutal shooting game. He has been awful lately, but I kind of want to give him a break because he's just been so in and out of the lineup. But he went 0 for 4 from 3. He missed 2 free throws in the second quarter. And it felt like Sabonis got fouled a million times, but almost all of them were non-shooting fouls. Every time he would finally get an advantage down in the post, he had to work so hard for it, and he would get some space, then they would just foul him before he could get a shot up, and the Kings would have to reset the possession because they weren't in the penalty, because they weren't drawing fouls otherwise. And what the Thunder were really doing was they were forcing Sabonis to try to beat them one-on-one in the middle of the court, and he just really wasn't able to do that because, I mean, that's not what he's best at. But with Malik Monk being out and the Kings having no other point guards, it meant no one was going to get downhill and create chances for Sabonis and get him the ball going downhill with the offense or with the defense shifted out of position. Instead, Sabonis just had to try to beat Hartenstein or Jalen Williams one-on-one with everyone standing around on the perimeter, and that's just not good offense. I mean, that's not what Sabonis is good at. The only bright spot really was Keegan hitting the 3, got a steal on Chet, stopped Caruso at the rim. He was making plays, but the defense definitely dropped off. Like, there was a play where Lou Dort just outran everyone on the Kings, and the defense just didn't stop him, and he got behind everyone for an easy layup. And so things really started collapsing. I thought guys were just passing up shots. Keon Ellis came around a dribble handoff, had some space, didn't take it, and then dribbled around a bit more, and then was forced to take a 3 because it was the end of the shot clock. And he made it. And the Thunder were giving Kings shooters space around these dribble handoffs. It felt like they were generating a lot of open looks, and they were passing up so many of them, which was letting the Thunder off the hook and letting them sink into the paint and just take everything in the paint away. LaVine finally did hit a couple threes, one off an offensive rebound, one off a broken play. But then SGA was just responding with threes of his own. And it wasn't until the very end of that quarter that Sabonis finally found Zach LaVine on a cut when he was in the mid post to get LaVine to the rim for an easy bucket. And it just felt like finally something within the offense between Sabonis and LaVine. Because that's the biggest reason that the Kings' offense isn't as good as we kind of hoped it would be with Zach LaVine, is because the partnership between Sabonis and Zach LaVine just hasn't worked. There's a play at the start of the third quarter where you could just see the disconnect. Zach LaVine has the ball in the wing. Sabonis is asking for the ball so that they can initiate a dribble handoff. LaVine doesn't want to give it to him. LaVine doesn't like dribble handoffs. That's very clear. He just doesn't like them. He wants the ball in his hands. And so Sabonis sets the screen. LaVine comes around and kind of snakes in front of where Sabonis wants to roll. So Sabonis has to pop back out and forces him to catch the ball. Sabonis to catch the ball on the perimeter, not getting downhill. It's just like that wasn't good offense. LaVine is driving into two defenders and Sabonis is catching the ball on the perimeter. That's not good offense. So you could just see the disconnect between those two trying to play together. But the third quarter is where the Kings got it going. Sabonis got a hook shot to start the quarter, which was nice. Just finally saw something go down. But it was the quarter of Keegan Murray. He took a charge. He blocked SGA. Then it was Ellis who drove into the paint and found Keegan for a three. And it was really about the Kings playing with pace, being able to get stops, push the ball the other way. That is how they started this little comeback that they had. Keon did a very good job of pushing the pace and making the right decisions, but the Kings were getting a ton of stops at the rim, being able to play straight up defense, forcing misses, rebounding those misses, pushing it the other way, finding Zach LaVine in the corner for three. Keon hit a three, got a couple of steals. They were just playing so fast, generating all of these Keegan Murray corner threes from their defense and generating corner three after corner three after corner three. And there was one frustrating play in there where the Kings had all the momentum. I think they got the lead down to 10. And Zach LaVine has the ball wide open from three. And he passes it up, drives into Lou Dort, and it's called for a charge. The Kings then challenged, and it was overturned to a blocking call. But it's just so confusing why he didn't shoot that. Wide open from three. The Kings have all the momentum. I know my boy Trey Lyles is shooting that every single time. Zach LaVine needs to get the confidence of Trey Lyles, okay? Or the mindset of Trey Lyles. When you got momentum, just chuck up that three in transition. Golden One Center was ready to explode. Everyone thought he was going to shoot it. He's like a 45% three-point shooter or something, Shoot the ball. I feel like I can predict what almost every other player on the team is going to do in certain scenarios because I've been watching them for so long. With Zach LaVine, I can never predict what this guy is going to do because it felt so obvious that he should shoot that and he didn't. Other times he'll just take tough threes. He's so confusing, and that's what makes it frustrating for me to watch. But Keegan did hit a three on that same possession. So no harm, no foul, but I'm trying to understand him, and I just can't. But the Kings went on a 16-0 run to get within 7 points. If they just hadn't fallen apart in that second quarter, maybe they could have actually gotten back into this game. But OKC finally started to get their offense going. They started generating easy looks for Chet inside. SGA started to get downhill. Chet was getting some easy dunks from the dunker spot. When OKC was missing, they started to get the offensive rebounds. And the Kings were still scoring. LaVine hit another three. Keegan hit another three. But OKC was just answering every single time. Then Jake LaRavia came in, started to do some crazy things. He intercepted a pass in the front court that led to a Keon three. Then the next defensive possession, forced a jump ball. Side note, whenever the Kings win a jump ball and tap it their way, they can never come up with it cleanly. I don't know why. But then LaRavia started getting fancy with it, going through the legs, cross, driving to the rim. And I don't know why, but there's something so fun about watching LaRavia try to attack. The way he gets so low, and he had a nice take to the rim for what should have been an and one. I don't know how it wasn't a foul. But then the very next possession, Keon, and LaRavia, they were just moving the ball between each other on the perimeter that led to another LaRavia drive where he actually did draw a foul. DeMar hit a corner three that cut it to 6. But then SGA just started responding, playing like the MVP that he probably is. And at no point did I actually think the Kings were going to win this game. That doesn't mean I wasn't having a good time watching the third quarter. But this is just like the type of player Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. He's going to respond. He's going to calm things down for the Thunder. And just exactly what he did. He was blowing by LaRavia very easily. He's just impossible to stop on these drives. Pair that with him hitting step back threes. It was going to take the Kings hitting every shot, which they pretty much did, paired with OKC going completely cold. And OKC just didn't go completely cold. Keegan hit a three to end the quarter off a nice feed from DeMar to end the quarter only down 8. So there definitely was some hope, but OKC just wasn't going to go that cold, and the Kings weren't going to force them to go that cold. The start of the fourth quarter was a mess, just like the start of the second quarter. It's just mirror images of each other. Caruso, 2 easy takes to the bucket. Valanciunas gets called for a moving screen. And so it's another game where these minutes where the other team's best player is sitting. Just like with the Bucks with Giannis sitting out at the start of the fourth for 6 minutes. It's the same here with Shea, where the Kings lose the minutes and the defense is just so disappointing. It's one thing for Isaiah Joe to just get hot and be knocking down step back threes over Keon Ellis, which he did. But it's another thing for Caruso to just so easily get to the rim 2 straight times to start a quarter. And it forced Sabonis and DeMar to have to come back early. LaRavia did hit a 3. He also started doing some more things. One thing about Jake LaRavia, you're going to notice him when he's on the basketball court. He's going to be trying stuff. It doesn't always work. And he was a very big positive. In the fourth quarter, he did some interesting things, though. Just trying to attack and it not going very well, but he did get a steal. But I'll never fault him for that. I want the Kings to keep this guy so badly. He's so much fun to watch. But the Kings got into foul trouble early on in that fourth quarter. 4 fouls in the first 3.5 minutes. The Kings made a few other nice plays offensively. Keon had a steal that led to Sabonis going like behind the back and a really nice feed for Zach LaVine and 1. Keegan had another 3 and then had a big block on Chet from behind as Sabonis took it in the chest going straight up. But it just wasn't enough because the Kings weren't able to get stops. Isaiah Joe caught fire, like I said. Then Shea comes back in, and at that point, Shea coming back in, you're just not going to win. And that's why I never really had faith in this game, because even if the Kings were able to, say, tie it up or take the lead, Shea was always going to come back in. And in the last 5-6 minutes of this game, OKC was going to outplay us. We got a little bit of garbage time towards the end. I don't even think Devin Carter got in during garbage time, which was weird because I'm pretty sure it was Markelle Fultz, Isaiah Crawford, Isaac Jones, Terry Taylor. Oh, no, maybe he wasn't. No, and Doug McDermott. Yeah, he wasn't in the game. That's weird. But Doug McDermott, 3 for 3 from 3 in garbage time. It's fun. Wish he could do it during the actual important parts of the game, but it is fun because, vibes are down and then you just get to see Doug McDermott come in and lace some threes. It gets the vibes up a little bit more after a tough game, Now the Kings are done with the tough part of their schedule. They still have not the easiest schedule, but it's also not the toughest schedule to end the season. But we can go through some of the box scores. Some of them look pretty bad. Like Sabonis, 8 points on 3 for 12 shooting and 0 for 4 from 3. He had the 8 assists, the 12 rebounds, but he couldn't hit a jumper to save his life and couldn't get anything to go. But I think this is really where you see the lack of a point guard. You don't have a point guard that can set Sabonis up. You don't have a point guard that can set DeMar up. You don't have a point guard that can run the second unit and set LaVine up. So LaVine has to try to make things happen. And so you have to have guys play outside of what their role really should be. And it leads to underperformance as a whole. I think Sabonis did a good job playmaking and setting guys up for good looks. And I think DeMar did the same. I thought DeMar's passing was very good. But DeMar also went 4 for 15 for only 10 points. He's been struggling with his shot lately. He had the 5 assists, but you need him to shoot better, really, if you want to win. Zach LaVine went 7 for 16, 4 for 11 from 3. He had 19 points, 7 assists, 3 turnovers. So the assist to turnover ratio, a lot better this game than last game, where I think he had like a 0.5 assist to turnover ratio. and he was able to knock down some shots, able to knock down some threes, but you can still see how much he struggles playing in the pick and roll. He's just not a good passer out of the pick and roll. And so that hurts the second unit the most, but it also hurts even just the starting unit of not being able to play with Sabonis very well. But at least he scored 19 points, and it wasn't him just showing up late in this one. But then it was Keegan going 9 for 13 from 3 for 28 points. Add in 3 blocks and a steal. It's always fun to watch Keegan have one of these games. He's good for at least one of these per season. And it's always these kind of low volume 3-point shooting games. He never takes 20 threes to hit 10. It's always he took 13 and made 9. I just wanted him to keep shooting the ball every time he touched it, because it was the type of game where you say, why not? Why not just have Keegan shoot? And really, that's the time of the season we're at. Why not just let Keegan just shoot the ball a million times? Same thing with Keon. Keon went 4 for 8 from 3, 12 points. He had 4 steals and 2 blocks. 4 assists, 3 rebounds, really just filled the stat sheet. He's another guy, just keep shooting the ball. Every time these guys are open, I want them shooting the ball. Make defenses respect you. Don't let them just be able to sink into the paint. Keegan, LaVine, Keon, all of them, just let it fly. Off the bench, LaRavia played 21 minutes and put in 11 points, 3 steals, 0 turnovers. That's huge. Jake LaRavia didn't turn the ball over in a game. Let's go. 2 assists, 2 rebounds. He's another guy that just stuffs the stat sheet on 4 for 7 shooting. Fultz had another nice game. He's been having some nice games recently. Really on both ends of the court, but 6 points, 2 assists for him without a turnover on 3 for 6 shooting. Valanciunas, he's been struggling more lately to stay on the court. He only had 2 points on 0 for 4 shooting and only played 8 minutes. And so you can just see defensively how he's played off the court, but there are going to be games where the matchup favors him a little bit more, and so I'm sure he'll get back on track here. The Kings' next game is against Portland, and the schedule really gets a lot easier here, especially in this next little stretch. They have a big road trip coming up, but they end off this homestand against Portland. Then they play Orlando, Indiana, Washington, Charlotte. Those are all winnable games. Then it gets tougher at the very last stretch of the season, playing some important games like against Phoenix on the last game of the season. But the Kings really need to take advantage of these next 5 games if they want to make the play-in. So we have Portland. Portland's a team that I feel like they always give the Kings trouble, and they haven't been a bad team this season. 32 and 41, that's very respectable. I think it's always been their size, having like Jeremy Grant and Shaedon Sharpe, along with the big centers that they have in Ayton. But they will be without some of those guys. I think Jeremy Grant's going to be out. I think Ayton's going to be out. Maybe Sidi Sissoko plays. That would be wild. The Sidi Sissoko revenge game. I don't know. He might be out though. But the Blazers, they just terrify me every time because they have so many of these quick players that can attack, get by the Kings defense. And if the Kings defense isn't locked in, like we do see from time to time, and their rotations aren't on point, then it's just going to be either layup lines or open threes all game. Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Denny Avdija, Scoot Henderson, like all of those guys present different problems, either with speed, size, or a combination of both. So the perimeter defenders need to be able to provide some resistance here, and then the rotations just have to be on point. The Kings need this to be their get-right game. They need Sabonis to get back into the flow of things. They need DeMar to find his shot again. They need LaVine to have an efficient game. This could be the get-right game that gets them going in the right direction to end this season. I will be at this game, first time going to a game this season, so I am excited for that. But yeah, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back probably very late on Thursday, like I said, because I'm going to this game. So I'll be recording this pretty late. So if you're one of those people that, watches it right when it comes out, maybe you're out in Australia or something, this will be probably a very late one to come out. But I will see you guys then. Peace.